Hello, everybody. Happy Black Birders Week. My name is Darren Miles Wilson. I am an educator, photographer, explorer, rabble rousing do gooder, lover of the outdoors, and a co organizer of Black Birders Week. And I am here to welcome you all to our wonderful talk that we're about to have with Jason Hall. So, Jason Hall, over the years, Jason Hall has transformed his love of birding into a movement for community and inclusion. He is a son of Southern California and the adopted son of Philly. He is also the founder of In Color Birding Club. This is a nonprofit that creates safe, joyful, and welcoming entry points into birding for historically marginalized communities. Through In Color Birding Club, Jason and his board work to expand access to nature across the Philadelphia region, partnering with local organizations to host bird outing, sponsor buses for public school field trips, provide classroom supply scholarships for teachers, and organize community food drives. In 2024, Jason teamed up with Dexter Patterson to launch the Bird Joy podcast, a vibrant space where birders of all backgrounds and experience levels can explore the diverse stories, ideas, and joy that makes birding such a powerful connector in our lives. Outside of birding, Jason serves as an executive director of large molecule analytical sciences in the pharmaceutical industry. He lives in Montgomery County, Pennsylvania, with his wife and two children. And now, without any further ado, I welcome Jason Hall.
All right. Good afternoon. Happy Black Birders Week to everybody. I hope everybody's been having a fantastic week. Today, I'm going to present a little bit about gulls. And if you know me, you know I very much enjoy gulls. Hasn't always been that way, but I find myself at times being a ambassador for these lovely birds. And so today I was hoping to talk to those of you that maybe are intimidated by gulls or just uninterested, maybe, or just curious, right? And kind of want to know what the appropriate way is to start. And I'm going to give you my perspective on what I think would be the healthiest and most joyful way to approach it. And we'll try to dispel any approaches that cause anxiety or any of the other bad things that sometimes happen when it comes to um, exploring new kinds of birds within the community. All right. So I've been birding since about 2000-ish, 2001 in high school. I am married, have kids, one in college, one in the third grade. I did found In Color Birding with five other folks in 2021 and 2022. We've been doing events around Philly ever since. And if you've ever heard that story, I founded that group after the first Black Birders Week in 2020. So everyone that organized that and put that on sent me on a whirlwind of thought for the next year. And by 2021, I had decided to start In Color Birding. And so In Color Birding is absolutely 100% a child of Black Birders Week, for sure. And my homie Dexter, you all probably know him, Wisco Birder. He teaches multimedia and podcasting and a bunch of other stuff at University of Wisconsin. And he came to me after we had a Black Birders retreat in 2022 and said, "Hey, let's do a podcast." And we haven't looked back since. It's been since 2024. So my favorite, instead of doing my favorite bird, which is the sandhill crane, my favorite gull is an ivory gull, and I've never seen it. It's one that I aspire to see, but it's still one of my favorites. And on the right is a picture I took of an Iceland gull at a trash dump, which I know trash dumps and birding is popular conversation these days. So happy to take questions on that towards the end if we have them. So where did this all start? In 2022, I was having a day where I was suffering from some severe anxiety. My wife told me to get out of the house and go birding and go kind of try to clear my head. And so I had decided earlier that winter that I was going to try and study gulls. And I took myself up to a spot where I knew where there were some gulls sitting on some ice at a local reservoir. And I sat there and I started to feel better and I started to work through the gulls and just look at them and write things down and see if I could recognize things. And I came across this gull that was towering over everybody else. Didn't have necessarily the same plumage, And it just looked different. I'd seen gulls at this spot for many years. Um, I started to notice some little things like it's the biggest and furthest out feathers. It's fingertips or primaries were whitish, uh, and at best really really light gray instead of dark like many of the other birds. Its underwing was white. Its bill was very black and big, you know, and kind of this orangey hue on the fleshy parts of the legs. And so I sat there, freezing cold, looking through my bird guide, looking at um, anything I had with me to try and help make this determination. And I was like, this is no way. This is the middle of Pennsylvania. This is not a glaucous wing gull. This doesn't make any sense. And so I texted a couple people I knew and decided I was going to take the shot and put it uh, on a very scary place sometimes, which is a Facebook bird ID group. So I did that. Um, I put it on North American Gulls. You see, I gave a bunch of uh, preamble, just telling people not to be an ass. And I kind of gave my estimation on what I thought it was, and it turned out to be correct. Mind you, at this point, I just decided a month before I was going to um, try and study gulls and learn them a little bit. And here I am finding the first ever recorded state glaucous wing gull in Pennsylvania. Right. And so it's not like I've been an expert or even am an expert now. I'm a gull enthusiast. But that kind of sent me down the path of like, whoa, I'm getting all this attention now for gulls. And it's great. It's fun. It's awesome. It's a great community, but I still need to go learn some gulls. So that's where it all started for me, kind of a weird sequence of events. So a lot of people, when they look at birding, they have these levels of complexity to things, right? You got your sparrows, your warblers, you got your flycatchers, right? Then you get into just weird shorebirds, and if you've ever tried to ID shorebirds, it's similar to gulls at times. And then a lot of people, when I talk to them, gulls are just it's like this weird continuum people have of thinking that gulls are like this kind of unattainable ID thing, right? And I think it's a myth, and it's a kind of does a disservice to the idea of looking at gulls, right? I think we put them on this pedestal of complexity, and yes, they are complex, but they're just birds, right? They're not your ability to ID one is not a representation of your value as a human being on this planet or in this community. So I think we got to start taking them off there. And although I think this is kind of comical, the way people talk about gull ID, um, I don't think it's a healthy way to approach it. And we'll talk about some of that moving forward. So gulls are part of the Laridae family, Laris, right? They can be, my son is always confused. He's like, there's gulls in the Target parking lot. And I'm like, yeah, those are ring-billed gulls, right? Um, and so a lot of people don't realize that they do like to be pretty far inland at time. If you go out west, Utah, Idaho, right, you'll find a bunch of California gulls inland, just hanging out, nowhere near an ocean, but somewhere near some bodies of water somewhere. They are pretty smart, right? So they will steal food from others, including humans. If you live anywhere near New Jersey and you haven't had a funnel cake stolen from you on the boardwalk, right? It's a rite of passage. They eat almost anything, including funnel cakes, including trash. See my previous picture of gulls at dumps. They have these special glands that help them remove excess salt. And this is a feature you see across a lot of seabirds at times, right? You've heard of tube noses, where they have the salt excretion on the front of their nose, the front of their beak. They are loud and they breed in large colonies. They usually stay with one partner, until that partner kind of moves along or is no longer there. And so that's similar to a lot of seabirds. They can live 10 to 30 years in the wild if they survive youth, right? And youth is a pretty tough time for gulls. So, just a little bit about them. We'll talk a little bit more about what makes them a little special and how to work on some of the ID. So why is it hard to ID gulls? Is it really hard to ID gulls? Do you need to ID gulls? I don't know, right? I don't think you should put that pressure on yourself. But a lot of places that people come to with this is, um, they have different plumages. They start out these cute little kind of leopard looking fluff balls, right? Just sitting in dirt on the ground, and they start to put on these extra feathers as they get older, right? Some brown, some light brown, some white, some gray, different shades of gray. Their fleshy parts, their bills, their legs, they change color over time as they age. So they're a lot like humans in terms of we can watch their age um, progress the same way, we kind of do with kids or family members that are, babies, toddlers, preteens, teens, and then adults, right? There's different physical, emotional, and behavioral features to them. So one thing that is also hard is, unlike many other birds, you're not really studying gull sounds. I mean, you could. I don't know how enjoyable that is, but it's not like if you decided one spring you were going to listen to warbler song, or go out and just experience warbler song and do some mindful birding in the morning or something like that. I don't know anyone that does mindful birding with listening to gulls in the morning. I guess you could if you're sitting on a beach, but it's just not a way that people typically approach it. So you kind of are missing that part of it at times. They're far away sometimes. If you're at the beach, they're kind of out there swimming, in different spaces. And sometimes, like at the Tullytown trash dump in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, there are more than 80,000 of them, and you don't know really where to start. Right. And so I think a lot of these things are places where people, the normal way we say, quote unquote, normal way we bird, of being able to listen to a song, and, you know, we're not really looking at the plumage patterns of a juvenile Wilson's warbler, right? Or, a juvenile Baltimore Oriole. There are juveniles. You can see pictures of them and you can recognize them, but there's no first cycle, second cycle, first winter, pre-basic plumage, all this other wild, weird words that people use. So gulls present a little bit of complexity there. So, like I said, gulls are really, I think the approach is key. And I was in a chat last year. There was a black-headed gull around Philadelphia, and I was gonna go see it, and there was some conversation about the plumage and stuff, and like somebody dropped this in the chat, and it's like, for people that are beginners, which some of them were in the chat, like this is not the place you throw people to right off the bat. This puts you in a mindset where you immediately feel like you have to devote some serious academic expertise to trying to figure out goals. And I think that approach again is not the correct one, because it doesn't put you immediately in a space where you can start to garner joy, appreciation, and even love for these birds. So I think we need to rethink a little bit on what goals represent, right? They're not villains. I think a lot of people villainize them because they will parasitize in terms of they will steal food, right? They will, chase other gulls around, chase other seabirds around. They'll get chased by other seabirds. They're kind of loud, and they survive because they've learned how to exist adjacent to us, right? And with us. And so I think when they are trying to do what they need to do and competing with our, let's say, enjoyment of a hot dog on the beach, right? People want to villainize them as if they're doing anything other than what they're supposed to do and finding smart ways to survive. Um, if you have ever sat on a beach and had a gull start walking up to you, gulls can recognize your gaze. They can recognize when you're paying attention and not paying attention, right? They can take your cues. They watch you eat food. They watch what part of the food you eat, what part of the food you throw away, right? They're not stupid. And we don't talk about them the way we talk about corvids all the time, but they're actually pretty smart. They'll change their height depending on how thick they think a shell is from a clam, and they'll go up higher if they need to drop it further. So you're telling me the gull is aware of the power of gravity, right? And consistent acceleration down to the Earth's surface. So like that part is pretty cool. In modern taxonomy, there's no gull extinctions. So other than there was a historic species on one of the Pacific islands, the don't know if I'm saying this correctly, Kwahine gull. Um, but that was, 700 BC or something like that, right? So we don't really know if it was uh, made extinct due to the arrival of Pacific Islanders or not. They're found on every continent, right? They don't breed on every continent, so that is a key. They are found in the waters off of Antarctica, and they do adapt like we do, and I think that part deserves a lot of admiration. They get out there and figure out how to survive, and we talk about this sometimes too with like house sparrows and starlings. It's like, why are we not admiring their ability to survive on this planet in spite of us? Right? It's almost like we take it in affront that they're not suffering because we're here. And I think we have to flip that thought process and say, man, we are not doing a great job as humans on this planet to preserve it. And these birds are smart enough to find ways through it. And so maybe we should pay more attention to them and protect and respect them a little bit more. So, like I said, we've taken beautiful marshland. Most of New York City was kind of like this, Manhattan. We turned it into buildings and cars and all this other stuff. And these birds are still here, right? They're still finding a way to survive. That ring-billed gull in the McDonald's parking lot is having a good day, right? I love that picture. So, how should you approach finding your own goal joy, right? And I really, I've obviously taken the play from bird joy, um, and goals is a specific kind of joy, I think. Before I go through all this, one of the things that I like about goals is that even right now, it's a puzzle. I don't see it anything other than it's a puzzle sometimes. That if I have the time and opportunity, I can take my time and study it a little bit or just enjoy it. Or even if I'm not studying, I'm not writing down any field marks or anything, I'm just sitting somewhere watching some gulls do some silly stuff also is a lovely thing to do, right? So as we go through this presentation, you'll see that I'm offering you ways to approach goals that are not the typical way that people would have you approach goals. It is all based in finding appreciation for them first, and a way to garner joy in being outdoors, enjoying your life through hanging out with some goals. So the first step is chill out, right? Don't freak out. I showed this slide in the context of a different presentation once, and I think it made a lot of sense for people. Like, just be a birder. Don't worry about being a bird knower. And I think a lot of people confuse the two. They think that being a birder means that you have to be the most, you have to have memorized the most facts, you have to have the biggest checklists and the most lifers and all this other stuff. And I think this is advice you can take for all birding, not just gulls, but I think for gulls, it's particularly representative, right? Of just be a birder. Like, just first you got to say to yourself, hey, I live somewhere where there's some gulls that I have the privilege of going to see, and I have time today, and I'm going to go see them. I'm not going to go see them so I can be an expert. I'm going to go see them just so I can enjoy them and watch them, observe them, right? Maybe take a few mental notes, but I'm not putting the pressure on myself to do any bird knowing at this point. And so I kind of wish I would have done a little bit more of that when I had seen this glaucous wing gull. And I was kind of limited by the falling sun, but I probably could have driven a little bit closer and got a better look and taken some more pictures and written some more notes. But honestly, I think the more of what I should have done is just kind of put all that down and just observe what it was doing, and just kind of watch it and start to think about, how does this bird that lives on the Pacific coast, all the way up and down, mostly in the Northwest, how does it end up out here in Pennsylvania? Makes no sense. Second is to just be aware of your local homies, your local gulls, right? And whether you're on the East Coast or the West Coast, right, you could have a number of the ones in the top two on the left, right? And there's some lesser known gulls that we don't always get. So little gull, Sabin's gull, black-headed gull. Like I said, my favorite ivory gull, and Ross is going with ivory gull. I'll show you later on what its range is. But a lot of these gulls are not common in every place, but some of them are. So you could go out and let's say, you're looking at Merlin and say, I'm going to explore my area and I type in gull and it shows you like 10 gulls and only three of them are common. Let's say it's ring-billed, American herring gull, and lesser black-backed gull. Okay, cool, right? You know that. Um, so I wouldn't worry about having to recognize the difference between a laughing gull and a Franklin gull at the moment, right? That's not anything you need to be into. Just try to focus on what you have around you. First, find the appreciation for it and just find your familiarity with it. Step three is if you're going to get a bird guide, right? And the one I have on the screen here is the one from Amar Ayash. And it's heavy, right? It's a thick guide. But the thing I like about it is Amar realizes it's a thick guide. He spent better part of a decade writing this. Um, and I am one of those people that when I would get a bird guide, I would just, what I need to read the introduction for, right? I'm a grown man. I don't need to read a bird guide introduction. I know how to ID birds, right? But when it came to this one, I really slowed myself down and said, let me just read. There's probably stuff I don't know. And like, let me take the pressure off about like jump straight over to this taxonomy of this gull and start looking at individual primary feathers and all this other nonsense. Like, let me just first understand the family of birds that I'm looking at, right? And what kind of, I would say North America's expert on them has to say. And when you read at least in Mars book, he has a lot of statements in there that say similar things around taking your time, pulling the pressure off, just being thorough, right? But not, adding this sense of having to the next day go out and be the goal expert in your patch. So I encourage that any kind of goal guide you get or bird guide you get, I encourage you to read the introduction, take your time with it, and I promise you it will serve you much better. So step four, take advantage of the proximity, right? I like warblers, but I'd be honest with you, I hate staring up in the trees for like 4 weeks in the spring. Like it's not enjoyable for me. I'm much more like shorebirding. I'm much more like looking at gulls. And it's because of a lot of different things. Gulls don't move around as much as warblers do. Um, and gulls are in places that I think I might uh, enjoy just a nice sit a little bit more. And so instead of warbler neck, you can get yourself some gull lull, right? Maybe take a nap in between looking at gulls, which sounds lovely. So this one is a big deal to me. I think this is part of the approach that I was talking about, where I think sometimes people look at gulls, and if gulls are at a place someone is going, they'll just gloss over them, right, and be like, "That's a gull. I'm not going to ID it. I'm not going to even look at it. Like it's just another gull, just another seagull." And I think if you're going to get rid of that attitude and then say to yourself, well, I am going to pay attention to the gulls. And so, how do I do that? Sometimes you might have the opportunity to make it a little bit of an adventure, a little bit of something fun and not full of pressure. And so, on the left here, you have a boat that's somewhere in some ocean, right? It's a lot of pelagics kind of look like this. People go out on, and I've enjoyed a few pelagics, and I'll that black-headed gull I showed you guys at the beginning. My last pelagic my real one that I went on, I spent the majority of that 6 hours storing up over the side of the boat. And then by the time we got back to shore, I was just fumbling my way into my car to just drive home in shame. And I look out of my front window and that black-headed gull is flying right there off the parking lot that I was at because they had just dumped the rest of the chum into the water. And so I got great pictures of it and I actually got to see it. It was kind of the reason I was out there. And so that part was lovely. So, don't do me. Take your Dramamine. If you're going to go on a pelagic, right, get prepared. Not everybody gets seasick, but I do. So I have to let go of my ego and prepare as best possible. So, but as you do that, if you're out looking at gulls, like gulls are going to be around, right? but you may get to see other incredible seabirds that are actually part of that gull ecosystem. So when you see great blackback gulls on the coast of New Jersey, sometimes those great blackback gulls are 50 miles offshore and they're hanging out with Wilson storm petrels or great skuas or wandering albatross, right? So they're not necessarily this kind of species that is only evident on the shoreline. You realize that they can actually travel pretty far and survive out on the water for a pretty long period of time. Um, I do this with most birding, but I think with gulling, it's even more appropriate. If you're going to go somewhere in the winter and it's cold and look at gulls, like plan yourself to have a delicious meal afterwards, or a treat, or bring yourself something, a hot thermos of soup or coffee. Like have a, and I know it sounds really cheesy, but have a endpoint where you can reflect and celebrate on whatever you studied or saw or experienced or witnessed when you were birding that day, and especially if you were gulling. The picture on the right there with Dexter and Amar is from the Gull Frolic that they do at the, I think it's Illinois Illinois Audubon Society, I think. Um, and they're out there and it's like 9 degrees and they have an indoor space with food and they hang out, but then they go outside and they have all these gulls that are on the Great Lakes there, and they find some good community. So I think Dexter's gone a couple of years now, and it's just great to see how that is growing. Or you could have homies like last year with In Color Birding, we went up to, or a couple years ago, we went up to Rockaway Beach in New York, and we looked at piping plovers, and there were a number of gulls up there that I was able to show people. We're actually going back up there tomorrow to hang out with Indigo and Sam Graves. So it should be a pretty lovely time. So when I say make it an adventure, I mean, don't just focus on, oh, I'm going to look at gulls. This is going to be hard. Like, make it an adventure. What else am I going to see? Who am I going to meet? What am I going to eat afterwards? Am I going to make some friends? Right. Um, I think that's an important approach to gulling that we should apply to all birding, actually. Enjoy the journey. I think this saying is true. It's not about being right with gulls. Like, I've gotten gull ID wrong in front of everybody all the time, right? Like, it's not always easy. And like I said, I'm a gull enthusiast, not an expert necessarily. But, I have to actively fight this fear of being wrong about something with the gulls, right? Because all that fear does is hold me back from experiencing whatever joy is in my path for observing them. And so it's really about, what do I want to get out of this experience with these birds, right? Not what am I trying to get out of it so I can prove it to somebody else, or uh, you know, be able to give a talk at Blackbirders Week, right? It's really about, am I enjoying what I'm seeing? Am I learning something the way that I like to learn things, right? And am I fulfilled, right? So please apply that anytime you're birding, and especially when you're, if you decide to go look at gulls. All right, step 7. So um, do this the way you want to, right? You can grab the scope. This is our homie Nicole here in Philly at the Discovery Center, probably looking at some weird ducks out on the water. But you got a scope or you have some binoculars, you have a spot you can look at some gulls. Like, go out and do that. That's standard, birding. It's, you can be joyful in that and have a good time, like I said. But there's other ways to experience them as well. Maybe you want to write about them. Maybe you're not out there to really ID all the things, right? Maybe you just want to say, hey, there's a group of 7 gulls here. A couple of them look a little bit different. I'm just going to watch them for 30 minutes and write about how they're interacting, right? And that's how you learn, right? Or that's how you find joy. You can do art, right? You can paint them, you can sketch them. There's a bunch of fun bird artists out there, and I think we need more. I don't think we can ever have enough. So that's another way to experience it. I had joked at the beginning about no one's really listening to gull calls, to to study, and I don't. I'm sure some people are, but I do find joy when I am at the shore or somewhere where gulls are calling, and it's in the context of other things like ocean waves or things like that. Like it's a great sound, right? And so maybe there's some mindful birding you can do walking down the beach, right? And you're listening to the gull calls and you're listening to the waves and you're listening to the breeze or other birds that are coming back and forth. Maybe there's oyster catchers or willets or other things making noise, right? Find your way to enjoy it that makes sense for you. Excuse me. If you want to make content, right? I love a good reel. I love sometimes dancing on Instagram. I love taking cool pictures if I have the opportunity or privilege to at the time, right? Um, Maybe you want to do a series, right, on gulls or seabirds or anything like that. So, and you're not interested in necessarily getting all these ID points correct. You just want to present what you're seeing in nature, right? Do it that way. And lastly, read about them. Read about birds, gulls, other things. Find different mediums to explore. Some people have blogs. There's one thing I like to do is just kind of occasionally just search a hashtag for a gull species or something and see how other people are presenting their sightings, at least on a platform like Instagram, right? Uh, so yeah, bird the way you want to, not the way someone told you that you need to. And this step 8 here, pick your champion and obsess joyfully, right? So I mentioned that the ivory gull is my favorite, and I've never seen it. And so it's my favorite because it's kind of an aspirational bird that I would like to see, right? It's found very far north in the Arctic. And, I kind of enjoyed the range map here because I'm like, man, this bird was like, I really don't feel like being around any people. And so I kind of like the idea of I don't even want to see one if it comes down here as a vagrant or gets lost or something. I think I actually want to go to where they live one day if I have the privilege of doing that and kind of experience their habitat, and take that humility as a human to say I'm gonna go here and just sit and listen to the quietness of what it must be like up there at times, right? And see what these birds experience probably for days, weeks, months at a time without experiencing a single human, So um, that bird represents more than just a cool all white gull with a cool bill. Like it's a little bit more than that. It represents kind of a space that a species exists that we need to protect, So one thing when you're starting with these birds is a lot of people get scared off by the juvenile plumage, right? Or the non-adult plumage, right? Start with the adults, right? Don't jump straight into juvenile plumage because the juvenile plumage it has an endpoint, which is the adult plumage. So you can actually start to reference the adult plumage when you go back and start learning the juveniles, right? We'll talk a little bit about the parts of the gull and how you can approach it, right? And even when we get into that, and we're talking about um, the different sections of the bird and everything. Like, remember that you don't have to memorize all that, right? That's just for you to kind of understand the topography of the bird, right? And if you're not finding ways through that gives you joy, then pause and start over, right? You should always be finding joy through your learning process. So these are California gulls, herring gulls, the two on the left, and then Western gulls and ring-billed gulls on the right, right? And so they have a lot of similarities, right? They all have different shades of gray or black backs or mantles, people call them, as well as their wings, right? The upper side of their wings that they fold back. And they all have these weird brown splotchy patterns as juveniles, right? Just a bunch of kids in puberty walking around. Just looks silly. So start with the adults, worry about the juvenile plumage later on. Okay. So we'll go through some basic anatomy, and I pulled this picture from the internet because it's got a whole bunch of fun words on it, right? And I'm not gonna go through all those. I think when you look at a gull and someone says, "Hey, how do you ID gulls?" and they start spitting out these words, covert scapulars, tertials, primaries, what is a foreneck? That's wild, right? These are all anatomically correct words, right? But they're not necessarily helpful to the person that's going out their first time in birding. I was at an outing a few weeks ago. We had a little sit here in Philly with a bunch of collaborative groups, and we had some gulls, and they were like, "Hey, Jason, you mind doing a little goal ID session with us? And I was like, sure. And I started talking about a mantle for like 60 seconds. And then one of our board members, Katrina, was like, Jason, can you explain what a mantle is? And I was like, yep, see, I did it. Right. I'm not speaking to my audience. And so this picture is a little bit easier, minus the font. But it still got some weird words in there, right? It says the arrow pointing to the back, gray mantle saddled with fine brown marks, right? Well, the mantle saddle, right? It's just the back, right? Like you don't have to be super fancy about it. You can do all that stuff later on if you choose to. Chocolate brown primaries, right? These are really like if you talk about raptors and people talk about the fingertips, it's just kind of the fingertips, like the furthest out on the wing. And then this one on the bottom makes me laugh. Fine vermiculated markings on greater coverts. It's like that makes me want to take a nap, right? And so really that's just brown and white marks on the side of the wing, right? So when they stretch their wings out, if you think about a wing, I don't know if you guys can see me, but the upper part of my arm, right? Like right here. I got some coverts. There's uh lesser, median, greater coverts coming up this side, right? And if someone says tertials, that's the trailing edge of the wing. So it's like my elbow, right? If I turn it this way, everything on the back side of my arm is the tertial side, right? So find ways to relate the bird's information to, whoops, sorry about that, to your own anatomy or anatomy of other birds that you may be a little bit more familiar with. Okay. But don't jump straight into all the extra fun words, right? Those will come with time. Check before you go, right? Um, so you know you can I sent Dara some links on just how to understand bar charts, right? These are just if you see thick green lines and they're filling up the entire space, that means that bird is pretty much present ubiquitously at that location at that time, right? And the link will show you how eBird posts and uses the data people generate to give you a bar chart, right? So you'll see for that American herring gull, and this is I think from somewhere in San Diego. You know, by the time we get to the middle of the year, it's kind of gone, right? And it comes back in the fall. But the California gull is there all year round, right? A little bit of dip in maybe October, November timeframe. So just check that before you go, like I said, because there's no point in trying to study every single goal that could possibly be there just right off the bat, especially if you're a beginner. It's really about which ones are you most likely to see. And so just checking my time here. Okay. So how do you start looking at goals? Like I said, know your location, what's expected, right? Couple species of birds that you might see, right? That's all you got to know. Start with basic differences, right? This is a big gull. This is a little gull, right? This gull looks super chunky. This one looks slender and long. Don't worry about the ID right off the bat. If you've never said to yourself, "I'm going to look at gulls today," and you're going to start doing that, don't add any other expectations of just I'm just going to start with the basics. I'm not going to, and maybe you don't ID a single thing. That's okay. But you should be able to go out and say, hey, okay, I think these ones are adults because they have light heads and gray backs and wings, right? And then these other ones that have these just chaotic feathers are not adults, right? And that's kind of where you start, right? Take your time and practice in a way that's meaningful to you. Like I said, you can sketch them, you can take pictures of them, you can write about them, you can just observe them, right? And I would say I had a group in San Diego that I taught and then took them on a beginner gulling course. And we got to a spot where there was like, I don't know, like 300 or 400 gulls on this mud flat. And there was another group of birders there that were, I'd say, more experienced in looking at gulls at the time. And they were just firing stuff off, right? And I could see the group that I brought, they immediately started to get anxiety, right? Because they were like, "Oh man, am I expected to do that? Like, how are we going to do this?" And so I literally physically separated them from that group. We walked away from that group, and I started talking about goals, and I could see their anxiety. And somebody raised their hand and they said, "Jason, like, we get it. Like, you're going to show us the ID, but like now that you're here and we're in it, like, where do you actually start? Like physically, what do you do? What do you look at? Right. And I thought it was such a great question. Um, and so we did that. We picked a small group of 3 gulls that were really close to where we were. And we didn't pay attention to anything else. We just started with those 3. And you can even just pick one. And we just looked at those 3 gulls for like 30 minutes. The people were rotating in the scope, binoculars, asking questions. Well, this one in the front, it's got like a weird thing on its bill that looks different from the other 2. And it was just a pressure-free activity of kind of like that silly song, one thing's not like the other, right? Like just trying to observe where you see differences. Do they look big? Do they look small? Because my perception of what I see is different than someone else. And so being able to hear them speak up and say, I see a bird that has brownish wings, but there's a little bit of dark gray coming through on the feathers on its back, right? As in the bottom right bird there, right? Great. So now I know that your eyes are seeing that, you're recognizing that, and you can do that on your own, right? You can write that down. So that's a good way to start, right? Is just pick one bird, do it the way that works for you. And okay, so almost done here, and then we'll have some time for some questions. Don't forget to enter the contest. All right. And particularly if you look there, artist Casey Gerard, they have created birding portraits for a number of us throughout every Blackbirders Week that we've had. And they do an incredible job. I think they are a consistent ally to this cause every year. And they have prepared a really special Gulls of North America poster that I think somebody can win. And I'm going to give you a little preview of it here. They've been working really hard on it, and I want you guys to see it. And I encourage you to enter the contest, right? So that's a cool poster to me, right? It's got all your fun birds on there. You could put it up on your wall and not have to go anywhere and just look at some gulls and kind of study a little bit or just appreciate them. And or maybe say to yourself, you know what? I've never seen a Heermann's gull. Let me go Google that one and see what's going on over a cup of coffee on a Sunday morning. Okay. So I encourage you to enter the contest. And I will leave you with this advice, right? So I don't want anyone leaving here continuing to accept the fact that they should be intimidated by looking at gulls, right? That's a silly thing that we have to leave in the past, like all the other stuff that I think Blackbirders Week has showed us that we need to let lie, and that we need to replace with a more inclusive and joyful pursuit of birding. And so before you see them as a mystery or some challenge, right? You should see them as something that you would respect, something that is a sign of resilience, a word that I think we use a lot in our communities when we face tough times and we persevere through a lot of different things. And so these goals to me are kind of, I don't know, I feel like they're co-pilots on this planet, where they're looking at things that are changing and shifting and happening a lot of times due to humans, and they are finding ways through it, right? Through their own evolution, through their own thought. And so we should respect and protect them as we go along. And that is it for me today. I just want to thank you all for coming. I want to thank the homies at Black AF and STEM for putting on another lovely Blackbirders Week. And for the theme this year, someone texted me earlier in the year and was like, guess what family we're going to feature this year? And they knew I love gulls. So I've been excited about this ever since I heard that. So I just appreciate the team there. I appreciate Dara for putting this together, making sure all the tech stuff works. And I guess I'll take a few questions if anybody has them. I can't hear you, Dara. Can you guys hear me?
I'm sorry, my mic was muted. Awesome. Well, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Awesome possum. Thank you so much, Jason. I loved hearing that, because I have to admit I'm guilty of one of those people who's like, gulls. They're gulls, only recent, well, not super recently, but I'm now at the point where I get on people for saying seagulls, because I am bothered by that. But I'm building my skills, and that's what I love about this week. Every year, like last year, I learned so much about sparrows that I didn't know that much about. This year, I'm learning so much about gulls, and specifically, identification skills. So that's why
Mm,
this presentation was super helpful to me. But just because I know that it's not just you and I on this, thank you everybody for attending so much. Again, my name is Darren Miles Wilson. I'm one of the co-organizers for Black Birders Week. I'm one of a handful of people who work really hard to produce a lot of things, produce a lot of ideas and prompts and topics for you all to kind of think over and just ways for you to participate in. And I'm so grateful to see the community coming through. And now I see like spread out all over the country, sometimes internationally too,
mm, yeah,
events popping up. And I love the agency. I love
yeah.
the agency of people like pretty much adopting that attitude. Like we don't need to ask permission. We never needed to, but we're putting these on. So let's come on, everybody, come through. So thank you all so much for being here for this virtual presentation. I hope you're able to attend anything in person. And I welcome your questions. We see your comments. We see all of that. So please ask away, just so I'm not asking all the questions. I'm sure other people have things that they want to ask about Jason. And my first question that I wouldn't mind getting to you, so while we wait for some questions coming through. Excuse me, our first question has already come through. So we have
Mm-hmm.
Amber. Amber has asked. Thank you, Amber. This is
Mm,
great. Thank you. Awesome, right?
yeah.
You mentioned house sparrows and European starlings. Are there any invasive species of gulls in the U.S. that you know of?
No, no. I think that's interesting too. It's an interesting question because songbirds, the house sparrows and the starlings, um, for the most part, you wouldn't imagine could make it across the Atlantic Ocean in big numbers to establish populations here. So they had to be physically brought over. These gulls, however, if they feel like it, they can fly up to Iceland. Like lesser blackback gulls that I see at the trash dump in the winter. In the summer, they go up to Iceland and they breed. And then some of them will go back down the other side or over into Greenland and go down into Europe. And so there's these populations that are connecting up there in the Arctic, right? And so that um, uh, glaucous wing gull, right, that came out from the West Coast, right? I don't know what it was doing. It was going somewhere. It was following somewhere. But I think that's the beauty of gulls is that they can be all over this planet, and they don't necessarily, if you look at how they operate, um, they're kind of survivors, right? So they're not like some birds where they have niche uh, uh, um, behaviors and places where they live and eat, right? Like you got the starlings are competing with the uh, eastern bluebirds, the house sparrows are competing with the eastern bluebirds for nesting cavities, right? Well, the gulls aren't necessarily doing that. They're fighting with each other over fish, right? And so for gulls, it's really more about can they survive humans as their habitat is messed up more than or can they displace other gulls, right? And so it's just kind of a different operation. So that definition of invasive, I think, would be pretty hard to give any gull species just based on the way they operate.
That was a really good question and a very thorough answer. Thank you.
Hmm.
That kind of leads me to, I have a list of questions that I had on my own that I wanted to ask you, but this is a perfect
Sure.
segue to a question I have myself. So given what you just said about how goals like they thrive, they often thrive around people. But for me, I've been very dismissive of them for that very reason, similar to house sparrows.
Mm-hmm.
So, but what else can that success, also similar to house sparrows, kind of reveal about their intelligence and like certain
Yeah.
behaviors?
Yeah. They're not unintelligent, right? They are smart enough to like they study us. It's the wild part that I don't think people realize, right? Like that, you worried about the gull stealing your food or being loud or a swarm of them coming down on your child's freshly packed lunch, right? But there's organization to that. There's intelligence to that, right? They're literally watching you. So if you've ever been to the beach and you see a gull just sitting on top of a building and looking, right? They're watching the humans. They're seeing who's throwing what in the trash. How often is somebody walking by that trash can? Are other birds by that trash can? Is there another gull that's going to swoop in and take the rest of that chili dog that I want, right? And so you then take that and you extrapolate it to, well, these wild stories of these gulls in the Pacific Northwest that ride in trash trucks to the dump. Like they move trash around the Pacific Northwest and they've tracked these gulls that will go into the truck. The truck gets closed and they ride the truck 70 miles down the road to go to the trash dump. And they've not only done it once, they've done it multiple times, right? And they do it on certain days, and they know where they're going, and then they fly back to where the original trash trucks are getting trash. So they'll eat. They got a little snack on the road for 70 miles to the trash dump, right? And they got the whole truck to themselves. So like that kind of stuff to me says that these birds should be respected more for their intelligence, right? And I think even more so because they impact us. Like we don't complain about crows and ravens like that, because crows and ravens kind of keep their distance. They also have a F around and find out attitude, so they don't, we kind of stay away from each other. But gulls are like, no, I'm going to F around and I'm going to find out because I want to get this food from these humans. I want to survive. I want to do this. And that level of confidence to me and intelligence is really impressive. So I think about them a little bit differently than I think the general public has kind of framed them.
Here. All right, here. We need people thinking outside the box for the benefit of birds. All right, we're gonna save them because they face many threats nowadays. So on behavior. So again, I am a new person coming to appreciate gulls. I appreciate birds. I appreciate all birds, and I'm coming to appreciate even more so gulls. All right, gulls. But they're just confusing me when I look at just like, so if I'm just a complete novice, like I'm not interested in birds, anything, but I'm trying to what is not like a look, but what is a behavior maybe that you could describe that would convince like a person who's just like, oh, whatever, these trash birds, as you guess, like what, just something to kind of get them like, oh, like thinking a little bit differently.
Yeah. I think if you have the opportunity to go to experience gulls actually on the beach and not in a place where they're surrounded with stuff is good, right? So if you, or whether it's a beach or a body of water, I think if most times when you see them is they're in a parking lot or on the boardwalk or at a trash dump, you don't necessarily see the elegance of their existence, right? And so I would suggest, instead of only poo-pooing them in those spaces, that you take yourself out to the beach, watch how they glide across the waves of the water, watch how they interact with other gulls. When you see a whole group of gulls, how are they positioned? How do they sleep, right? How do they forage? How do they interact with the other birds in their spaces, right? I think those things are more things that'll kind of make you kind of remember that they are birds than the way they're acting on the boardwalk. One of the coolest things I ever saw was 3 great blackback gulls on the coast of New Jersey trying to rip apart a shark that somebody had just caught. Like one of the gulls pulled it out of the surf, so it must have got too close to the shore, and they just dragged it up. And great blackback gulls are the heaviest gulls on the planet, and their tactic is brute force. So they will just they're just bullies, right? And so there was 3 of them, and each of them wanted this shark, so they're just ripping this shark apart. And it's a shark, so you're like, listen, y'all better stay away from them teeth. And it was a baby shark, but it still had teeth. So I just thought that was like super metal. Like I was like, these, and so that's different than it diving in the trash to steal a funnel cake. Right, you're like, oh, okay, so you can get the funnel cake and you can go yank a shark out of the water. That's pretty gangster to me.
Yeah, that's super tough.
Yeah.
When you say heavy, how heavy? Just curiosity.
Oh, I don't know the amount of pounds. I just know they're the heaviest and like biggest. So
Bird.
yeah, so if you think about either a really, really big crow or like the size of a raven, they are pretty big. So I'm sure they'd be comparable in size to like a red-tailed hawk if you saw them both flying over your head at the same time.
Okay. All right.
Mm-hmm.
They got some body to them.
They do. They do.
All right. Well, we're not at the very end. We have a few more minutes left for some questions. And again, I welcome anybody who is watching right now to type a question on in, so we can go ahead and ask Jason. You have him here. Like, go ahead and use this man and all his breadth of knowledge. So I've been listening to the Bird Joy podcast like recently, and one of my favorite things that I like listening to, like hearing you and Dexter talk, I like hearing, I love hearing you describe the reactions of the people who participate in your bird outings. So that being said, what's his name? Who's a 7-year-old kid who's just killing it. there was a really young individual who's I want to say
In Wisconsin. Yeah. 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 I know who you're talking about.
okay.
It's out with
I want to
Dexter's.
say Ramon, but I know it's not Ramon. It's two syllables. It's there.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
but nonetheless, though, I love the aha moments that he
Mm-hmm.
gives the individuals, especially as such a young individual. But I want to hear like what's like if you can think of an aha moment you've had while sharing your appreciation and knowledge of goals with individuals. Have you had an aha type of moment where
Mm.
you've seen someone be like, "Oh, these are beach trash birds," to, "Oh no,
Mm-hmm.
these are some pretty diesel birds that lift sharks out the water."
Yeah.
Something like
Yeah.
that.
Um, yeah, so I've had it. I'll be honest with you, I have it every time we go somewhere where there's gulls, especially if we're with in color birding groups. So, like, we've taken trips to Rockaway, New York. We went to Cape May last fall. We went to Cape Henlopen in Delaware the previous year. And so there's gulls. And so I have an opportunity to, like, I think because people know that, um, they can ask me these questions and I'm not going to approach them or make them feel bad or anything. It's just like, oh, you're curious? Cool. Let's do it. The aha moments are when you make them slow down and just compare two birds, right? And say, hey, on the left is a ring-billed gull and on the right is a herring gull. I'm not going to ask you to ID them. I just want you to tell me what you see that's different. And when they approach it like that, and they start to hear themselves say out loud, oh, this is this, that is that. And then, oh, here comes walking in a juvenile bird, right? And you don't know if it's a juvenile herring gull or a ring-billed gull, right? And so then I said, well, what do you see on that one? Is it the same size as the adult herring or the adult ring-billed, right? And so those are the aha moments, right? Where you make them slow down and just find confidence in their own ability to recognize these things. And that's what you want to give people, is the confidence to do it. So that, because once you get the confidence, the joy is just it will be unbound coming to you when you feel comfortable and looking at those birds.
Thank you. I love
Yeah.
that. I love that. Also we have someone, we see these comments. What is it? I don't think it's Andre. Is
I
it the
don't
name?
think it's Andre.
It's not Andre. I know
It's
the
on
name is
the
not
tip of
that.
my tongue. Yeah.
I know
Yeah.
it's
And
not that, but
I
I'm
can't
gonna
remember.
leave here and listen to it and be like, oh, missed opportunity.
Yeah, Andre is the one out in Philly. He's our homie out here. Is also special. He walks and IDs birds and makes weapons out of sticks and jumps in creeks, and he's a joy to be around. So I haven't gotten him in the gulls yet, though. So I still got work to do.
my kind of peoples. Um, well, is there anything that maybe you want to cover that we haven't covered? Is there anything I should ask you before I do my shameless plugs of our sponsors and our supporters?
No, I just want to tell people, like, I hope you feel confident and at least just taking your own time and space to not throw gulls in a dark birding closet. Um, please still enjoy all of the. I'm not one of those people that only loves gulls and doesn't love anything else. I love a good shorebird and a warbler and raptors and all that other good stuff. Just like everything else in birding, I think we try to do. Just remind yourself that gulls are there for you when you're ready for them, and to not put any pressure on yourself the same way you do with birding. We all got to work and do all other stuff, but you riding the train into work. My homie up there in the Bronx, right, is riding his bike somewhere, and he's out in Jamaica Bay. He knows he can stop and look at gulls, and he can text me a picture. And so find your friends, find some. You can text me on Instagram. Trust me, I don't care how many of you there are. If you want to text me gull pictures and ask questions, I am so in. That would be like the best part of my day. All right. So I just appreciate everybody coming, and I hope this was helpful.
Well, thank you. And I'm sure it was helpful. It was helpful to me. So I'm sure it was helpful to somebody else somewhere out there. So yes, thank you again, everybody, so much for joining. I have to mention our sponsors and our partners for this year. Thank you so much to the Cornell Lab of Ornithology and Wild Birds Unlimited for your consistent support. Our programming, we would not be able to do so, and we wouldn't be able to do so as well, at least, without the support. As well, thank you so much to Casey Gerard. Casey is a wonderful individual to work with. It's such a pleasure to know them. I've known them for a few years, and I'm so grateful that that we have this partnership going. So I encourage everybody to follow along, participate in our daily challenges, see if you can get some really cool swag going. All right. And then, of
Mhm.
course, as well, thank you to Bird Collective and Knox Provision. And there's a whole slew of other in-person partners that deserve recognition and thank you. I have to thank my employer, PG Parks and Recreation, at the part of the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission. I want to thank the Grange Audubon Society, I believe, and out there in Ohio, where Nicole Jackson did a really cool falconry program with them this week. And then a handful of really incredible organizations in Connecticut who brought a lot of really cool in-person things, Blackbirders a Week events happening in Connecticut, thanks to Ade Ben Salhuddin, who's based up there. So thank you so much to everybody for supporting us. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much to Jason Hall. We would not be here without you right now. I encourage everybody to listen to the Bird Joy podcast, because it's just a really fun podcast to listen to. I got my mom into it recently, and she's really getting into birds now as well. So again, this entire week is about community and bringing each other together, and continuing to foster relationships that will last long past this week. I thank you all from the bottom of my heart, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your Blackbirders week. Bye,
Thanks,
everyone.
Thomas.